Are we on the air? We are.
Come on,
Limerick Writers Centre invite you to a book launch and a tribute event here in the White House. And partly because poor Tom McCarthy, who's the one-time MC at the White House Poetry Revival, will launch his new collection of poems at the White House Bar here. And Tom is dedicating the book to his mentor, the late Barney Sheehan, founder of the weekly poetry gathering in the White House in 2003. Before all that, I'd like to introduce the director of the Limerick Writers Centre, Dominic Taylor.
Good Tom, August tough all the road got in it. It is a delight and an honour to stand here in this spot once again to introduce a poetry event. I first stood here in April 2003 with Barney Sheehan at the inauguration of the White House Poetry Revival. At that time, the idea of holding a weekly poetry session where everyone who wanted to read a poem could do so was a revolutionary act. And I still recall what some people said on that night. They said that it wouldn't last a month and that it was only karaoke. Barney's White House Poetry Revival was the first weekly open mic reading in a pub in Limerick and possibly Ireland for the next 13 years. It played host to some of the best local, national and international poets, gaining a worldwide reputation. Now, people have often asked over the years about the name White House Poetry Revival with its evangelical undertone. The idea behind the name was to revive the poetry gatherings which began here in this pub in the winter of 1954 by Limerick poet Desmond O'Grady. Desmond, who was a schoolboy friend of Barney and was the first invited poet to the revival, became, through the years, the patron saint of the event here in the bar. The White House has always been a unique meeting place for people involved with the arts. It encouraged good talk and socialising in a comfortable, roomy pub close to the navel of town. When Desmond O'Grady first began what became known as the Poetry Circle here in the White House, poets had not read their poems in a public house in Limerick since the tradition of Irish Gaelic poets had died centuries ago. That first revival gave encouragement to a number of young poets to continue to write and carry on Limerick's literary tradition. Likewise, Barney's revival in 2003 once again rekindled the poetry spark in a new rising generation of poets. There have been many highlights during the 13 years of the White House Poetry Revival, and one I recall vividly is the collaboration with the Northern Voices group in Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK, when a group of White House poets visited Newcastle and launched a joint anthology. Another consequence of the revival was the setting up of the Limerick Writers Centre in 2008, and where we kept that link with the White House Poetry Revival by calling our poetry publishing imprint Revival Press, which to date has published over 50 titles, and a great deal of them first collections by Limerick poets. So what began as a small poetry reading in a pub in Limerick in 2003 has sent its ripples far and wide, bringing poets from the outside world to Limerick, while simultaneously encouraging Limerick poets to travel abroad, to learn, to be heard, and to publish. And this is the reason we are here tonight, to celebrate the new poetry of one of the stalwarts of the White House Poetry Revival, Tom McCarthy. When Barney became too feeble to run the event every week, it was Tom who took up the reins and kept it going until its untimely demise in 2017. Now, 3 years later, it's time to revive and recreate that literary tradition of the White House and to pass it on to future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominic Taylor. And now to launch Tom McCarthy's book, Mr. Christy O'Donnell.
line Cody just said about clapping on Christy. Anyway, I spoke to Tom last week and said, what do you want me to say about you, Tom? He said something nice. Right, on to the lunch.
That's going to be hard.
But yeah, Tom has been quite helpful of all poets in this place from the time I came in anyway. He came from a large housing estate, from a large family, and a lot of his poetry is written from memory, not only of his own family but of the area he grew up in. He first made friends with Barney when the rest of the world tried but couldn't. Or most of us who know him can recall Barney was a force to be reckoned with, and he's dedicating this book to Barney's memory. And in fairness, what can you say about Barney Sheehan other than he got this thing going and it's still going?
Yes, here.
You know, so no matter what you say about him, he put the seed here and now we have the tree. What else can I say nice about Tom? God, it's hard. Okay. Poetry comes from memory, as well as his universe, as he likes to put it, and the rest of us are plagiarists from it. You'll hear that in probably one of the poems Tom will read later, and it'll explain itself. Instead of just reading one of Tom's poems and saying, oh, isn't he great, and I'd let him do that because he does a better job than I would. But I did bring one I wrote about Tom after we had an altercation. And I call it the Fruit and Veg Man. It's like an insight into Tom, some, I don't know, 40 odd maybe years ago. Whereas Tom had a little cart and a horse, and he used to sell fruit and vegetables around our area. And he used to work from like something 5 o'clock in the morning till 8 or 10 o'clock at night, between getting it going and putting it to bed. But I'm just going to read this as an appreciation of Tom's poetry and his effort in the White House and his friendship with Barney Sheehan over the years. Fruit and Veg Man, for Tom McCarthy. Everyone on our street thought him a family friend as he drove his horse and cart around each bend. He called to the houses 2 or 3 times a week. It never dawned on us it was his living he'd seek. And all were good customers coming out to see. They'd buy his wares and get the odd apple for free. His horse, I recall, was a fine bay mare, and she pulled his cart, helped him sell his wares. And I used to think someone had painted a smile on his face. He liked the old mare and encouraged her every mile through this place. There were long days when he had to collect his stock at dawn. The mare went along, and I recall a foal that was fawn. My mother would go and meet him by his cart, and fruit and veg from Tom would soon part. A smile and a quiet whisper into his knowing ear. I'll pay you Friday, Tom, thank you, have no fear. As I watched, each mother had much the same to say. Free stuff during the week, but come Friday, they all paid. He used to have a small pouch like a belt round his waist for cash, and not once did I see him give the old mare a lash. Yet there were 2 bullies living near Tom and his mare, and for spite they would take her, driving Tom's spare. And by the time he got her back, she was a ladder of sweat. Yet she was no racehorse, she was more of a pet. And as was expected, Tom would have to go and sort him out and stop taking his mare. They both got a clout, and maybe their parents had to pay or get no credit like the rest. But these bullies were fixed, and Tom did his best. Sorted they were by him on his own, and soon after they would leave Tom's horse alone. For if the horse was tired and couldn't pull Tom's cart, all the mothers would then have no shop in the mall, and then that was open only on a Saturday. And anything happened to Tom or his mare, sure, all the mothers had a say. He even helped people to move from Ballot to Moyross. And in those days, anyway, I never saw him cross. He's older now, more settled in his ways, but thanks is due to Tom for those saving days. My final word for Tom is, well done. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Christy O'Donnell. And now, the man of the hour, Tom McCarthy.
No, I'm sure that many of you have heard this before, and just many of you that didn't hear it either. But this is a poem I wrote because I actually, when we moved to Ballinenty, we moved on to farming land, and we actually pushed out the farmers eventually. And there was a farmer by the name of Luke McMahon, and there was a 6-foot wall at the top of our avenue. And of course I wasn't able to climb that wall. But I grew up a bit, and I eventually climbed the wall. And what I saw for the first time, I was astonished and amazed. The sun was shining down on a cornfield. The golden leaves of the corn was fascinating. And I'd never seen that because we had no television, we had nothing in those days, so we didn't see those things. So then, this is where this came from. With the tumbling paddy and the horse-drawn plough, the reek, the whine and the cock, with the shave of corn and the thrashing flail, farming now seems mock. When the milking herd were milked by hand and the harvest cut by sigh, I helped my father up the land under all four seasons sky. With the planting in the springtime and the digging in the fall, with the saving of the harvest, I could hear the corncrake call. But the winter months were long and hard. I watched my father age. With the grubber and the harrow, with the ragwort he would rage. With his old clay pipe you'd hear him think, he'd check the clouds above, and with a smile he'd turn the soil. With the land he was in love. But time will wait for nobody, and the mowing bar came next. With the tractor and the combine, the corncrake lost its nest. And I often heard my granddad, to my father he would say, "'Tis nature that will suffer with the chemicals and spray." But I myself had memories of my mother making bread, with the oven on the fire and the train overhead, with the kettle and the skillet hanging side by side. "Fetch some water for your mother," my grandma often cried. With the churning of the butter and the shaving of the pig, with the curing of the bacon and the skimming of the milk, with the feeding of the chickens and the baking of the bread. When my mother's day was done, it was time to go to bed. She no sooner touched the pillow when the cock began to crow. She no sooner had her children when they began to go. And one by one they left the land in search of better ways, but what they learned on the farm stayed with them all their days. Now that I'm a granddad, my son works the land, with his tractors and machinery and his pipe in his hand. With my grandson there beside him, he'll check the clouds above, and with a smile he'll turn the soil on the land my father loved. And that was for Mr. Barney Shearer. This is a man that introduced me to rugby. One summer's day I was walking down through Ballinanty and I saw this man coming up on a bicycle. And he stopped and he said, "Tom, will you play a rugby game for me?" I said, "I will." Out in St. Munchin's College out there in Carberry Road. So he said most of the lads were gone on holidays. So out we went, and he had this fella at full back, and the ball came into this fella, and he dropped the first ball. So suddenly I became McCarthy. "McCarthy, go back there." So this is my memory of this man here. Liam Fitzgerald. And there's a rugby pitch called after me over there in Cardiff, Liam Fitzgerald Park. Well behind and beaten, scuttled on the ground, with trodden feet and weary limb, with silent crowd and battered men, no breath to make a sound. But deep within we'd hear his voice, that solemn binding cry. "Come on, get up, we need it. Come on, get up, where's your guts? Come on, we need a try." And with those words he'd scramble, with passion and with pride, but for you, Liam Fitzgerald, the blues would turn the tide. Well behind and beaten, but never down and out, and when the crowd was silent, Liam would always shout. In every game we'd hear his voice, that solemn binding cry. "Come on, get up, where's your guts? Come on, we need a try." I just had to pop this and read the first poem that comes to me. This is actually a poem that I actually wrote specifically for my daughter, Samantha. when I actually discovered she was lesbian. That was a dirty word back then. But now it's a different story. The pink syndrome. And the pink syndrome, Samantha explained to me, pink money. Whereas you can go into a gay club and it's called pink money, or when you're spending your money, it's called pink money. Gay, transvestite, lesbian. Words that spark off feelings of a sexual nature, as in homosexuality, homogeneity, homo, as in chromosome, a microscopic gene carrying body in the nucleus of a cell. That determines our characteristics beyond our control. Not a fault, just another innocent child. Already judged by its movements and speech. Judged by the elite, the perfect, the so-called straight. Has anyone that right? The right to dictate how another person should feel? Is it not important to our sexuality that we should be truthful and honest to ourselves? Ourselves. Or is it who you are, not what you are, that gets you where you are? Who are you? Who am I? Have you already judged me by my choice of topic? If so, forgive me for giving you the wrong impression. It matters not to me who you are. You will never sleep in my bed. Gay, transvestite, lesbian. My feelings I can't hide for the ones I love, or the ones that love me. Indifferent in the eyes of society. Socially, I'm not free. Stigmatized by the mockery of others through their ignorance. They fail or refuse to understand the way I am. I am what I am, but I thank God for being that way. But I thank Him for my feelings, and to them I will stay true. In doing so, I'm being truthful with you. I accept you as you are. I'm not asking you to accept me as I am, but to understand me for what I am. I'm sorry, lads, I just can't see the page. I'll do one more now, and that'll, I won't put you in more agony, as I might say. I read it from that light because I just can't see it. That's better. I can see through the book now. I wonder if I pointed at the anyone in the audience, would it see through them? For whom the bell tolled. This is a little poem that I wrote for a chap that was actually the Quasimodo of Ballinanty. He was a small, fat boy. And he loved the game of football. But you know, when you got together as a group, there might be 20 and you pick 2 people to pick 10 each. And they picked 10 each, but he was always left standing. He was always the last. Nobody wanted to pick him. you know. So this, for whom the bell tolled. After almost half a century, he shook my hand. Thanks, he said. He was the fat boy. Always passed over. Left wondering if he might be invisible. His mind was on the game, but he didn't have the shape of a footballer. His heart was in the right place. He wanted to play. He needed to be involved like everyone else. When we were selecting our team, we avoided him like the plague. He was always left standing. As children, we were heartless. In the end, it didn't matter who selected him. Nobody passed him the ball. He was the Quasimodo of the street, the hunchback of Ballinanty. When the game finished, he stood round until the light faded.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Tom's three grandchildren who will each read one of Tom's poems. The grandchildren of Tom McCarthy.
Right, so I'm not the grandchild, I'm the one with the big pink light that Tom just introduced. And might I say, I have never heard him to read a poem so poorly. I suppose this time, a little over a year ago, my dad was in a very serious car accident, and we're very lucky to have him here today. So to have this book, and anybody who purchases this book should treasure it, because we do. With that said, I'm glad to be standing here in the White House tonight, and most of my memories of my dad and his poetry is with the White House, growing up as a young person. I'd come in for the pint and didn't want to listen to the poems, but we had no other choice. We'd be told, go down to the corner and keep quiet. And as a young girl, I would have been the eldest of three, and I would have been the only one to live with Tom. And I used to leave the shop every morning, and he'd have a new poem. And you'd never get past the shop counter without hearing that poem, and without him picking a word out that you would never understand. But by the time you left the shop, you'd understand that word, and you'd understand that poem. So to say that I grew up listening to his poetry all my life is an understatement. What a poet he is. And to see him standing here tonight, I suppose, since poetry has left the White House, and many of you here, as you all would know him, he is a shadow of his former self, but I do know that he has enjoyed it, and he is happy to be back in the White House here tonight, where poetry does belong in Limerick.
Here, here.
Now, I'm not a poet, nor would I ever claim to be. I don't put pen to paper as well as my dad does, nor do I read it as well as he did. But I'll give this a lash for Dad tonight. So the name of this poem is Dad. And sorry, before I actually read this poem, I remember we hadn't moved out to our house in Ardnacrush very long. Big huge house for two people to rock around. And Dad came to me, as he did every night before he came into the White House. And he said, Samantha, type up this poem for me quick, I'm going to the White House. So I came in one night and I typed the poem, not understanding what I was typing, just letters. And he read it to me before he went to the White House, and he broke down crying because he had never recited it out loud. And he said, Jesus, I don't know when I read that poem now when I go in there tonight. I don't want everyone knowing I'm a big softie. So to this day, I actually don't know, did he read it? But at least I'll get to read it in the White House where it belongs. So the name of this poem is Dead. As a child, I never saw the white of your eyes or the smile in your pupils. I saw your eyebrows, the hairline on your forehead. I was familiar with the brass buttons on my substitute blanket, the polishings of your leggings and boots. I was familiar with your tunic. Later on I became acquainted with the peak on your cap of your head. The way you walked, I can still hear your softness. The way you walked, I can still hear the softness in your voice. A voice seldom raised to me, my brothers or sisters. If you had only said, I love you, son, once I would have remembered it. I needed to hear that, Dad. I needed to know if you saw the white of my eyes or the smile in my pupils. With your shyness and my youthful stubbornness, we lost each other along the way. But I never stopped searching, Dad. And in hindsight, I found you. Learning that you being there was your way of saying I love you. By providing, you were telling me you cared. In your silence, you were whispering, I love you, son. Forgive me, Dad, for not thanking you. Letting you go without letting you know how much I loved you as a child. Now, having learned from hindsight, I can only love you from a distance. As I said, I wouldn't be a poet, I wouldn't be well in verse and reciting, but I really do hope that poetry does come back to the White House and you do enjoy it, and Barney Sheehan's memory will always live on. Thank you very much.
Tom McCarthy's daughter, Samantha, and now his grandchildren, in no particular order, because I can't. Carry on, grandchildren.
Chameleons. A broken home, a world unknown. The children torn apart. Chameleons in a forest, forever changing hearts. Hopes are built, hopes are dashed. Lots of tears, so little laughs. Uncertainty and fear. The child is only asking for a little love and care. It matters not to them for whom the blame may lie. Beneath their smiling faces, you can see the tearful eye. The anguish and the pain is tearing them apart. Chameleons in a forest, forever changing hearts. A broken home, a world unknown, seems quite so unfair. The child is only asking for a little love and care.
Fresh green leaf. I was once a fresh green leaf. No worries, no regrets. But now I'm trapped inside a box. They call me cigarettes. I find it hard to breathe here. I'm screaming, let me out. But when you do, you light me up and put me in your mouth. I was once a fresh green leaf. No threat to anyone. But now I'm trapped inside your lungs. My life has just begun. I'll strive to make your breathing hard. I'll make you cough and choke. I'll block up all your arteries. I'll tell you I'm no joke. I'll get revenge for all the times you put me in your mouth. I'll let you breathe me in, but you'll never blow me out. I'll cast a shadow deep and wide, far across your chest, and listen to you gasp for air until your last request. You were once so fine and strong, no worries, no regrets, but now you're trapped inside a box because of cigarettes.
Tunnel vision. Standing alone, courting dismay. Tunnel vision, wanting to play. The position I seek has not been invented. I stand before you, lost and tormented. My world moves fast, sometimes too slow. It's all about balance, skating the snow. Everything's white, rosy and red. On my way down, I wish I was dead. Going straight, it's easy to say. Tunnel vision, wanting to play. Everything's easy, as high as a kite. Floating on air, way out of sight. Travel the world, all on my own. Skating the snow, happy alone. With everything white, rosy and red. On my way down, I wish I was dead. Tomorrow will come, tomorrow today. Tunnel vision, wanting to play. The position I seek has not been invented. Stand before you, lost and tormented. Standing alone, courting dismay. I search for the light, sometimes I pray. I ask for the strength to say no to the snow. I don't want to skate. I don't want to know where I go. To hear the birds sing, feel a breeze in my face. Eat with my family without feeling disgrace. The vision is there, but the tunnel is long. The demons I carry are persistent and strong.
Well done.
Thank you very much, Alicia, Kyle, and Jack. We now reach the stage of the interval, where we can talk among ourselves and gird our lines for the intrepid open micers. We would like them to dedicate a small piece, prose or poetry, to the memory of Barney Sheehan, and that's about the size of it. We'll return in about 10 minutes' time. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll do it again, thank you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second half, when the intrepid open micers strut their stuff. First to kick off is Mr. Martin Murray with, well, I'll let Martin introduce his music. Martin Murray.
I think I might stand and play this. Okay, so I'm only going to play one song and I have to go, okay?
Okay.
I have to play the second one. Okay, okay. Sorry, that's wrong, yeah, okay. The guitar was Aaron Sean. The guitar lost tune, so it threw me off. I'm sorry about that, you know.
Well, shut up, Barney. For Christ's sake, get on with the poetry.